There is a loop you have been living inside of, and until this moment, you may not have seen it clearly enough to name it. Someone throws something at you, a dismissal, a cutting remark, a subtle undermining dressed up as a joke, a look that says you don't quite belong here, and before you've even processed what happened, something in you moves. Your chest tightens, your jaw shifts, your voice changes pitch, your hands do something involuntary, and in that fraction of a second, in that gap between the provocation and your response, something is decided, not by you, by the loop. Because here is what they were waiting for, not the words, the reaction, the measurable, visible, undeniable proof that they got in, that they found the frequency, that they have access to something inside you that you cannot fully control. And the moment they have that proof, the loop locks. They know the code. They know how to reach you. And from that point forward, they don't have to work very hard because you've handed them the instrument they need to keep playing the same note over and over and watching you respond to it. This is not about being disrespected. This is about being measured. And most people never see the difference. Watch what happens when you do, because there is another possibility, one that most people never reach, not because they lack the strength, but because they never stop reacting long enough to see it. The possibility that the moment you stop being measurable, the entire dynamic has to rewrite itself. Not because you said something clever, not because you won the argument, not because you finally stood up for yourself in the way you'd rehearsed in the shower, but because you became something the loop cannot process. You became the observer. And observers at the quantum level do not just watch reality, they change it. That's not metaphor. That's not inspiration. That's the most precise description of what happens when a conscious, deliberate, fully present witness turns their attention on a system that has been running on autopilot. The system doesn't know what to do because the system was built for reactors. It was calibrated for people who respond. It has no protocol for someone who simply watches, and that's what today is about. Not how to respond better, not how to craft the perfect composed reply, not how to seem unbothered while quietly seething. We're going further than that. We're going to look at the loop itself, the mechanics of it, the quantum physics of it, the neuroscience of it, and the ancient wisdom that saw all of this coming thousands of years before we had the language to describe it. And then we're going to show you what actually happens when a human being steps out of the reactor position and into the observer position, and why, when that happens, the people around them have no choice but to rewrite who they think you are. Not because you demanded it, because you made it the only logical conclusion. But first, look closer, because the loop is not what you think it is. You've been told this is about confidence, about self-control, about not letting people get to you, and those things are real, and they matter. But they're the surface. The loop runs deeper than confidence. The loop is a measurement system, and every time you react, you are providing data. Think about what actually happens in the moment of provocation. Someone says something dismissive. Someone interrupts you with a precision that suggests it wasn't accidental. Someone minimizes what you contributed in a meeting, at a gathering, in a conversation that mattered to you. And in the space between that moment and your response, there is a biological cascade that happens so fast you don't experience it as a sequence. You experience it as a single event. But it isn't. It's a cascade. The amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, receives the signal before your conscious mind has even registered the words. It doesn't distinguish between social threat and physical threat with any meaningful sophistication. It registers. Something moved toward you with force, and it activates. Cortisol releases, heart rate elevates, the blood shifts toward the muscles, the vocal cords tighten, the face changes in ways you cannot consciously prevent. The micro expressions happen in milliseconds, far faster than any deliberate control can intercept, and the person who provoked you is watching for exactly that. Not consciously in most cases. This is not a conspiracy. It is something far more fundamental. It is social calibration. It is the ancient, primal, deeply wired human process of determining where someone sits in the hierarchy, of measuring whether this person is someone I need to be careful around or someone I can afford to be careless with. Every reaction you produce answers that question. And the answer you've been giving, without meaning to, without choosing to, is, I can be accessed, I can be reached, I can be moved by what you do. And here's the thing that makes this so precise, so almost elegant in its cruelty. The loop doesn't require malice, it doesn't require a villain, it doesn't even require awareness on the other person's part. The loop runs on pure social physics. Stimulus, response, measurement, categorization, repeat. You are not being attacked, you are being calibrated, and every reaction calibrates you lower. Now look closer. Because the question is not how to stop reacting. The question is what you become when you do. There is a concept in quantum mechanics called the observer effect, and it has been misunderstood, oversimplified, and spiritualized to the point where many people have stopped taking it seriously. So let's be precise about what it actually says, because the precision is where the power lives. In the famous double-slit experiment, particles of light, photons, are fired at a barrier with two slits. When no one is measuring which slit the photon passes through, the photon behaves like a wave. It passes through both slits simultaneously, interferes with itself, and creates an interference pattern on the screen behind the barrier. A wave pattern. Probability distributed across multiple possibilities. But the moment a measuring device is introduced, the moment observation is applied to determine which slit the photon actually passes through, everything changes. The interference pattern disappears. The photon stops behaving like a wave and starts behaving like a particle. It goes through one slit, it lands in one place. Possibility collapses into specificity. The act of observation changed what was observed, not the observer's intention, not their desire, not their belief about what should happen. The act of looking, the act of measuring, the act of directing conscious attention toward a system caused that system to change its fundamental behavior. This is not philosophy. This is measurable. This is repeatable. This has been demonstrated in laboratories with enough precision to be considered one of the foundational facts of quantum mechanics. And here is where we apply this with absolute exactness to the loop you've been living inside. When you react to a provocation, you are not just responding to the other person. You are collapsing the quantum field of that interaction into a specific, predictable, measurable form. You are giving the wave function a place to land. You are providing the data point that allows the other person's social perception of you to crystallize into a fixed form. This is who they are. This is how they respond. This is their frequency. I know how to reach them. But when you become the observer, when you stop reacting and start watching, you do not collapse the field. You hold it open. You allow the interaction to remain in a state of quantum superposition, where the other person cannot determine with certainty what you are, who you are, or how you will respond. And a system that cannot be measured cannot be controlled. A person who cannot be calibrated cannot be categorized. And a human being who cannot be categorized makes every assumption the other person was operating from suddenly, uncomfortably uncertain. And they don't know what to do with you. Because the loop requires your reaction to function, and you just removed it. If what you're seeing here is landing, take a second and like this video and subscribe. There is so much more of this work ahead, and you'll want to be here for it. Now let's keep going. Watch what happens in that moment, because it is extraordinary. When someone provokes and receives no measurable reaction, the first thing that happens is confusion. Not visible, theatrical confusion, internal confusion. The expected stimulus response chain has been broken. The brain, which was anticipating a specific outcome, is now in a state of informational gap. And the brain, as we know from social psychology, does not tolerate informational gaps. It fills them. And it fills them with projection, with assumption, with inference based on available status cues. And here's the most important thing to understand about how that projection works. When someone cannot read you, they do not assume you are empty. They assume you are deep. They do not assume you are indifferent. They assume you have seen things they haven't. They do not assume you are suppressing. They assume you have already processed something they are still reacting to. Your composure, your stillness, your refusal to be measured, these become a mirror. And what people see in that mirror is not you. It is their own assumption about what kind of person cannot be moved by what just happened. And that assumption, almost universally, leans toward depth, toward experience, toward a kind of quiet authority that doesn't need to announce itself because it has nothing to prove. You didn't say a word, and they just rewrote who they think you are. That's not belief. That's quantum mechanics applied to social reality. But let's go deeper, because this is where most explanations stop, and this is exactly where we need to keep going. Because becoming the observer is not simply a behavioral strategy. It is not a technique you apply from the outside. It is a fundamental shift in the position from which you experience your own life. And that shift, that movement from reactor to observer, requires you to look at something most people spend their entire lives avoiding. You have to look at the reaction itself, not suppress it, not override it, not white-knuckle your way through it while your internal state is screaming. You have to actually watch it. You have to turn the observer's gaze inward, toward the cascade, toward the tightening, toward the heat that rises when someone gets in. And you have to watch it the way a scientist watches a phenomenon, with curiosity, with precision, with the willingness to see what is actually there rather than what you've been assuming is there. Because here is what you will find when you look. The reaction is not you, it is a pattern. It is a learned response. It is a neural pathway carved by repetition. By every previous time something similar happened, and you responded in the same way, and the response became faster, more automatic, more deeply grooved into the architecture of your nervous system. The reaction is a habit of the body. It is not a reflection of your character. It is not evidence of your weakness. It is not the truth of who you are. It is a program running. And programs, when observed with sufficient clarity, can be interrupted. but you cannot interrupt what you cannot see, and you cannot see what you refuse to look at. This is the thing most people never do. They feel the reaction rising and they immediately do one of two things. They either follow it, they let it out, they respond from inside the cascade, they give the other person exactly the data they were scanning for. Or they suppress it, they push it down, they hold it in, they perform composure while the reaction continues to run underneath the surface, invisible to others but consuming enormous energy internally, and eventually finding its way out in some other form, at some other time, at some other person who was simply standing too close to the pressure that had been building. Neither of these is observation. Both of these are still reactions. The suppression is just a reaction directed inward. The observer does something different. The observer watches the reaction rise without following it and without suppressing it. The observer says quietly, internally, with genuine curiosity, "Look at that. Something is happening in my chest. My jaw just shifted, my breathing changed. Something in me wants to respond right now. Look at that. What is that exactly?" And in the act of watching, in the act of directing conscious attention toward the reaction, something extraordinary happens. The reaction begins to lose its automaticity. Not because you fought it, not because you were stronger than it, but because observation interrupts the loop at the most fundamental level. The loop requires you to be inside the reaction, running with it, giving it energy and direction. The moment you step outside it, the moment you become the one watching the reaction rather than the one being run by it, the loop has no one to run. This is not suppression. This is not performance. This is a genuine shift in the position of consciousness, and it is available to you right now, in this moment, and in every moment that follows. Let's pause here, not to think about this, to do it. Close your eyes if you can, or soften your gaze if you can. Take a breath. Not a performed, theatrical breath, but a real one. Feel the air move into your lungs. Feel the slight expansion in your chest or your belly. And now, with your eyes still closed or your gaze still soft, ask yourself this: who isn't doing the breathing right now? Not what is breathing, who is aware of the breathing? There is a part of you that is observing the breath happening. There is a part of you that is watching the rise and fall, noticing the sensation, registering the experience. That part is not the breath. That part is not the body. That part is the observer. And that observer, that quiet, aware, watching presence, is always there. It was there when you were reacting. It was there when you were suppressing. It was there in every moment you felt swept away by something you didn't choose to feel. It was just not in the foreground. It was not the position you were operating from. Now open your eyes and notice that observer is still here. It didn't go anywhere. It doesn't go anywhere. It is the most stable thing about you. More stable than your emotions, more stable than your thoughts, more stable than your opinions about yourself and others. It is the part of you that watches all of those things move through without being moved itself. That is the position of power, not control, power. The distinction matters enormously. Control is the attempt to prevent the reaction from happening. Control is the white-knuckled suppression. Control is the performance of composure while the internal storm rages. Control is exhausting, and it is ultimately unsustainable because the reaction will find its way out. The pressure will build until it can no longer be contained. The observer does not control. The observer watches. And in watching, in simply turning the clear, steady, non-judgmental gaze of awareness toward what is happening, the thing being watched begins to change. Not because the observer forced it to change, but because clarity is the only force that transforms without resistance. What you watch, you change. What you avoid watching controls you. This is the principle that runs through every ancient wisdom tradition, every modern psychological framework, every quantum mechanical observation about the nature of reality. It is the same principle arriving from 1,000 different directions, pointing at the same truth. Consciousness, when fully present and fully aware, does not just witness reality. It participates in its formation. And now let me show you something. Let me tell you about Mira. Mira was the kind of person who had spent years being described as too sensitive, not by enemies, by people who loved her. Her family said it with a kind of resigned affection, the way you'd describe a weather pattern that everyone has simply learned to work around. She feels things deeply. You have to be careful around Mira. She had internalized this description so completely that she could no longer distinguish between the truth of who she was and the story that had been told about her. She believed she was reactive. She believed that her emotions were faster than her choices. She believed that when someone said something that cut, she had no option but to bleed visibly, immediately, and in ways that everyone in the room could see. And so the loop ran. Every gathering, every meeting, every conversation that carried any friction, there was always a moment where someone said something and Mira responded before she meant to, and then spent the next hour or day or week managing the aftermath, apologizing for being too much, explaining herself, feeling the shame of having been so readable. What she didn't know, what no one had ever shown her, was that her sensitivity was not the problem. Her sensitivity was, in fact, her greatest precision instrument. The problem was that she was standing inside her reactions instead of observing them. She was so close to what she felt that she couldn't see it. She was like someone trying to read a painting with their nose pressed against the canvas. The image was there, the information was there, but the proximity made it impossible to see. The shift happened in a room with 12 people. A colleague named Daniel and someone who had measured Mira's frequency long ago and knew exactly which note to play, made a comment in front of everyone that was designed to look like a joke but landed like a dismissal. It was the kind of thing that has plausible deniability. The kind of thing where if you respond with hurt, you look oversensitive. And if you respond with anger, you look unstable. And if you say nothing, you look like you accepted it. The loop was perfectly constructed. Mira had walked into it 100 times before, but this time something different happened. Not because Mira had practiced a response, not because she had rehearsed what to say, but because in the fraction of a second between the comment and her response, she caught herself. She felt the cascade begin, the tightening in her chest, the heat in her face, the words already forming in her throat. And instead of following the cascade, she watched it. She felt herself noticing, something is rising in me. And she felt herself from somewhere just behind the rising, watching it rise. And in that watching, in that tiny, extraordinary act of becoming the observer of her own reaction rather than the person running it, the reaction lost its automaticity. It didn't disappear. It didn't stop. But it slowed. And in the slowing, she had a choice she had never had before. She looked at Daniel steadily, without urgency, without the defensive brightness that usually appeared on her face when she was managing something, without the slightly too quick reassurance that she was fine, that it was funny, that she wasn't bothered. She simply looked, and then she turned her attention back to the conversation as if the comment had been noted and filed and would be addressed in its proper time, which was not now. The room felt it before anyone understood it. There was a shift, almost atmospheric, in how the energy in that space was organized, because Mira had not given the loop what it needed. She had not collapsed the quantum field. She had not provided the data point that would allow Daniel or anyone else in that room to categorize her response. And in the absence of that data, the room began to fill in the gap with something it had never associated with Mira before. Depth, steadiness, a kind of quiet authority that doesn't need to announce itself. After the meeting, two people came to Mira separately, not to comment on Daniel's remark, to ask her how she stayed so calm, to tell her that they had noticed something different, to lean toward her in a way that they never had before, because something in her stillness had signaled that she was safe, that she was stable, that she was the kind of person who had already processed something they were still reacting to. She hadn't said a word, and the room had rewritten who they thought she was. Drop what you noticed in the comments right now. Was there a specific moment in your own life where you finally watched a reaction instead of following it? And what did you see when you looked? The real version, not the polished one. This field gets stronger when more of us are watching clearly, but here is the layer underneath that story that I need you to see. Because the rewriting of other people's perception of Mira, as real and as significant as that was not the most important thing that happened in that room. The most important thing was what Mira saw. She saw for the first time with absolute clarity that the reaction was not her. She saw that there was a Mira who could watch the cascade without being swept into it. She saw that the observer, the steady, aware, watching presence that had always been there, was not something she had to build or develop or earn. It was already there. It had always been there. It had just been buried under years of following the reaction so automatically that she had mistaken the reaction for herself. And when she saw that, something in her understanding of who she was shifted in a way that no amount of external validation could have produced. Because external validation, people telling you that you're calm, that you're impressive, that you've changed, is still dependent on other people's perception. It is still the loop, just running in a more flattering direction. But the observer who sees herself clearly, who watches her own patterns with the same steady, curious, non-judgmental gaze that she turns on everything else, that observer is not dependent on the loop at all. That observer is free. And freedom, at the quantum level, is what allows reality to reorganize. Let's go deeper now, because there is a layer underneath the reaction that most people never reach. A layer that explains why certain provocations land harder than others. Why certain comments, even ones that seem objectively mild, produce a disproportionate response. Why some people can say almost anything to you and it glances off, while others can say one specific thing in one specific tone and reach something so deep in you that you're still thinking about it 3 days later. The answer is not that those people are more powerful than others. The answer is not that the comment was objectively worse. The answer is that the comment found a crack. And the crack was already there. This is not self-blame. This is self-mastery. there is a critical distinction. When disrespect lands with disproportionate force, it is almost never really about the speaker. It is about what the speaker's words connected to inside you. A doubt that was already present, an uncertainty about your own value, your own competence, your own belonging, that had been sitting just below the surface, not quite visible, not quite resolved, waiting for something external to activate. The provocation did not create the wound. It revealed it. And the revelation, as uncomfortable as it is a gift. Because what has been revealed can be seen. And what can be seen under the observer's gaze can transform. This is the deeper work of the observer position. Not just watching your reactions in the moment of provocation, but turning that same clear, steady gaze inward toward the places where the cracks are, toward the doubts you haven't fully admitted, toward the identities you've been defending so fiercely because you're not actually sure they're true, toward the stories you've been telling yourself about who you are and why you react the way you do. Watch what happens when you look at those things directly. Not with judgment, not with the harsh, critical, you should be better than this gaze that most of us turn on ourselves when we notice our own limitations, but with the same quality of attention you would bring to watching something genuinely interesting, with curiosity, with the willingness to see what is actually there. Because here is what the observer discovers every time, without exception. The thing you've been avoiding looking at is never as dangerous as the avoidance itself. The crack you've been defending against, the doubt you've been managing, the identity you've been protecting. These things, when seen directly, when held in the clear light of genuine observation, do not destroy you. They become information. They become the precise map of the places where your internal ground needs strengthening. They become the raw material of genuine growth. Not the performed growth of behavioral change, but the real growth of seeing yourself more completely, and therefore being able to act from a more complete understanding of who you actually are. And when you act from that place, when your responses come from a self that has been genuinely seen and genuinely understood, rather than a self that is perpetually managing its own blind spots, the quality of those responses changes entirely. Not because you've rehearsed better answers, because you're operating from a more stable ground. The ground that can't be shaken is not the ground that has never been tested. It is the ground that has been seen clearly, including its cracks, and has been found to be fundamentally solid despite them. This is what composure actually is, not the absence of feeling, not the performance of stillness, not the suppression of the cascade. It is the stability of someone who has looked at themselves clearly enough to know what they are, and therefore cannot be destabilized by someone else's attempt to tell them who they are. That is a different kind of unshakable. And people feel it. They feel the difference between someone who is suppressing and someone who is genuinely grounded. The suppressor is performing, and performance, however skilled, has a quality of effort to it that registers unconsciously. The observer is not performing anything. The observer is simply present, and presence, genuine presence, has a quality of solidity that no amount of performance can replicate. Now let's talk about what this looks like in practice. Because the observer position is not an abstraction, it is a specific, learnable, developable capacity. And it operates through a set of very concrete mechanisms that you can begin working with right now. The first mechanism is the breath. Not as a relaxation technique, as an anchor. The breath is the one physiological process that sits at the intersection of the automatic and the voluntary. It happens without your direction, and it can also be consciously directed. And that intersection, that place where the automatic and the voluntary meet, is exactly where the observer operates. When the cascade begins, when the provocation lands and the amygdala activates and the heart rate rises and the words start forming in the throat, the breath is the fastest available pathway back to the observer position. A single conscious breath, not a performance, not a dramatic pause that signals to everyone in the room that you're working very hard to stay calm. A genuine, quiet, internal shift of attention to the breath, to the sensation of air moving, to the slight expansion, to the moment of stillness at the top of the inhale before the exhale begins. That moment of stillness is the gap, and the gap is where choice lives. Before the gap, you are in the cascade, running with it, giving it direction and energy. After the gap, you have options. You can respond, you can remain silent, you can redirect, you can ask a question. You can simply look at the person with a steadiness that communicates everything you need to communicate without a single word. But you cannot access any of these options without the gap. And the breath creates the gap. Neurologically, what is happening in that breath is that the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for executive function, for measured decision-making, for the capacity to evaluate a situation rather than simply react to it, is being given the fraction of a second it needs to come back online. The amygdala moved first. It always moves first. That is not a flaw. That is the design. But the prefrontal cortex can catch up if you give it the space. The breath is the space. And over time, with practice, with repetition, with the consistent choice to return to the observer position when the cascade begins, the gap gets longer. The automatic activation becomes less immediate. Not because you've suppressed anything, but because the nervous system has learned through repeated experience that not every social challenge requires escalation, that the cascade can rise and can be watched and does not have to be followed, and that learning changes the biology. It actually changes the neural architecture. The pathways of reactivity become less dominant, and the pathways of observation become more accessible. This is not a metaphor. Brain imaging studies demonstrate measurable differences in the prefrontal regulation capacity of individuals who consistently practice emotional observation versus those who don't. The observer position is not just a philosophical stance. It is a neurological reality that can be built, strengthened, and made increasingly automatic through practice. The second mechanism is the internal naming. When the cascade begins and you've created the gap with the breath, the next act of the observer is to name what is happening. Not to explain it, not to justify it, not to analyze it, simply to name it. To say internally, with the quiet precision of someone making a clinical observation, something is rising. There is heat in my chest. My jaw is tightening. Something in me wants to respond right now. The naming is not a performance. It is a genuine act of observation. And the act of naming, of applying language to a physiological and emotional experience, does something remarkable. It creates distance, not the cold, dissociated distance of suppression, but the healthy, functional distance of perspective. The distance between the one who feels and the one who observes the feeling. the distance that makes choice possible. This is sometimes called labeling in mindfulness-based psychological research, and the research on it is remarkably consistent. Simply applying a word to an emotional experience reduces the activation of the amygdala and increases the activity of the prefrontal cortex. The act of naming what you feel moves you neurologically from the reactor position to the observer position. You don't have to do anything else. You don't have to resolve the feeling. You don't have to make it go away. You don't have to understand where it came from. Simply naming it. I notice I'm feeling provoked. I notice something in me wants to defend. I notice heat. I notice urgency, is enough to shift the position from which you're experiencing the moment. And from the observer position, you are no longer inside the cascade. You are watching it. And what you watch, you change. The third mechanism is the quality of your gaze, not your literal gaze, though that matters too, but the internal quality of the attention you bring to the moment. And this is the subtlest of the three mechanisms, and in some ways the most powerful. Most people, when they try to stay calm in a moment of provocation, bring a quality of effort to it. They are working to stay calm. They are trying not to react. They are exerting force against the cascade. And that effort, that quality of force and resistance is visible. Not always consciously visible, but energetically visible. People feel the effort. They feel the suppression. And suppression, paradoxically, signals that there is something being suppressed, which means there is something there to find, which means the calibration continues. The observer brings a different quality of attention. Not effort, curiosity, not force, interest. The observer is genuinely interested in what is happening, in the other person, in the dynamic, in the room, in their own internal experience. The observer is not trying to prevent anything. The observer is simply watching what is. And this quality of genuine curiosity, this authentic interest in the phenomenon without the need to control its outcome, is what produces the quality of stillness that people find so disorienting and so compelling. It is not performed. It cannot be performed convincingly, not for long. It is the natural quality of consciousness when it is fully present and fully observing rather than fully reacting. This is why the observer position is not a technique you apply from the outside. It is a state you inhabit from the inside. And the only way to inhabit it is to practice actually being it. Not pretending to be it, not performing it, but genuinely turning the quality of curious, non-judgmental, fully present attention toward whatever is happening, including your own reaction to it. Let's pause again, right here. This is the second practice. Think of something that has been bothering you. Not the biggest thing, not the most charged, most loaded, most overwhelming thing. Something real, but something you can hold without being immediately swept into it. A conversation that didn't go the way you wanted, a dynamic that keeps repeating, a pattern in your own responses that you've noticed and that you don't entirely understand. Hold it in your awareness, not to solve it, not to analyze it, not to figure out what you should have said or what you should do next, just to look at it, to turn the observer's gaze toward it with genuine curiosity. What do you notice when you look at it without the urgency to fix it? What is actually there when you see it clearly? Is there something in that situation that connects to something older? Something that was already present before this specific situation activated it? Is there a familiar quality to the discomfort? a quality that you felt before in different circumstances, with different people, but with a recognizable texture. Don't rush to answer. Don't rush past what you're seeing. The observer doesn't rush. The observer watches and notice. The act of watching it, the act of turning genuine, curious, non-judgmental attention toward it is already changing something, not dramatically, not in a way that resolves everything instantly, but something is shifting in the quality of your relationship to it. It is moving from something that is happening to you to something that you are observing. And that shift, that movement from subject to observer, is the beginning of freedom. Now come back. Because there is a deeper layer here that I need to show you. We have been talking about the observer position as it applies to external provocations, to moments of disrespect, to the calibration loops that other people run on you. And that is real, and it matters. And the shift from reactor to observer in those moments genuinely changes how other people perceive you, and therefore how they treat you. But the deeper truth, the layer underneath all of this, is that the most important loop you will ever break is not the one between you and another person. It is the one between you and yourself. Because here's what most people never see: the external loop, the one where someone provokes you and you react, and they measure the reaction and the dynamic crystallizes. That loop is only possible because there is an internal loop already running. A loop that has been running, in most cases, for a very long time. A loop that says, when this kind of thing happens, I respond this way. When I feel this, I do that. When someone challenges me here, I tighten there. When this particular note is played, I produce this particular sound. The internal loop is the original loop. The external one is just its echo. And the internal loop was not chosen, it was learned. It was carved by experience, by repetition, by the accumulated weight of every previous time you encounter something similar and responded in a way that became the template for the next time. The loop is not a character flaw. It is a learned pattern. And learned patterns, when seen clearly, can be unlearned, not through force, not through willpower, through observation. The moment you truly see the loop, the moment you watch it with enough clarity to recognize it as a pattern rather than as the truth of who you are, it begins to lose its grip, not all at once, not instantly, but progressively. With each act of clear seeing, the loop becomes less automatic. The gap between stimulus and response grows. And in that growing gap, you find something you may not have known was there. Choice. Genuine, uncoerced, freely available choice about who you want to be in this moment. Not who you have been, not who the loop has made you, not who other people's calibration has categorized you as, but who you choose to be right now, with full awareness of the patterns you've been running and the freedom to respond from something deeper than those patterns. That is the observer's gift. Not composure as performance, not stillness as strategy, but the actual lived experience of being free from the automatic, of having access to yourself in a way that the reactor position never allows. And when you live from that freedom, when you consistently operate from the observer position rather than the reactor position, something happens to the people around you that goes far beyond the rewriting of a single interaction. Something happens to the entire field of your relationships, your dynamics, your reputation, your influence, people begin to organize around your stability, not consciously, not through any deliberate social maneuvering on your part, but because human beings are, at the most fundamental level, drawn towards stability in uncertain environments. Because the person who is not running the loop, the person who cannot be easily calibrated, who cannot be reliably provoked, who responds from something deeper than the automatic, that person represents something rare, something that the social organism recognizes as valuable even when it cannot articulate why. They begin to trust you differently, not because you've told them to trust you, because your consistency, your refusal to be dramatically different depending on whether the pressure is on or off, signals that what you see is what you get, that there is no hidden volatility waiting to emerge, that you are the same person in the difficult moment as you are in the easy one. And that sameness, that integrity in the original sense of the word, the sense of being integrated, of being one thing rather than many things depending on circumstances, is the rarest social currency there is. Let me tell you about Elias. Elias worked in a place where hierarchy was everything. Not the formal, stated hierarchy of titles and positions, the informal, unspoken hierarchy of who could make whom feel small and who could absorb that smallness without changing. It was the kind of environment where the calibration loops ran constantly, almost like background noise, where every meeting was also a measurement, where every interaction carried the subtext of, let's see what you're made of. Elias had been made to feel small many times, not dramatically, not in ways that anyone would call abuse, in the subtle, deniable, precisely calculated ways that are somehow harder to defend against than the obvious ones. A comment about his work that was technically a compliment but somehow left him feeling diminished. An invitation to speak in a meeting that was extended and then immediately undermined by someone talking over him. A pattern of small exclusions that added up to a clear message: you are not quite one of us. And for a long time, Elias responded the way the loop required. He defended, he explained, he worked harder to prove the thing that was being implicitly questioned. He showed up earlier and stayed later and produced more and said the right things to the right people and did everything that the loop suggested would eventually earn him the recognition that kept being withheld. And the loop kept running, because the loop is not solved by giving it more of what it's asking for. The loop is solved by stepping outside it. The shift for Elias came not in a dramatic moment, but in a quiet one. He was sitting in a meeting, the kind of meeting where he had learned to brace himself, and someone made the kind of comment that had always activated him. And this time, instead of the familiar cascade, something different happened. Something in him, some part that had been watching all of this for a long time without being heard, simply said, I see what this is, not with anger, not with judgment, with clarity, with the calm, precise recognition of someone who has finally looked directly at a pattern they've been dancing around for years and can now see it for exactly what it is. He did not respond to the comment. He looked at the person who made it, not with hostility, with interest, with the genuine, curious, undefended interest of someone who is watching a phenomenon rather than being subjected to it. And he held that look for just a moment longer than was comfortable, not as a power play, as an act of genuine observation. And then he turned his attention back to the meeting and continued as if the comment had been noted and found, on reflection, to not require a response. The room shifted, not dramatically, but perceptibly. The person who had made the comment, who had been expecting, at some level, the familiar response, the slight tightening, the too quick reassurance, the visible effort to manage the impact, found themselves in an informational gap. They had expected to measure Elias's reaction. There was no reaction to measure. There was only the steady, observant, utterly undefended presence that seemed to have processed the comment and found it somehow insufficient to disturb him. And in the absence of the expected data, the room's projection began. The assumptions started forming. Who is this person? What has he endured that makes him so unmoved? What does he know that we don't? Nothing had changed about Elias's title or his position or his output. Everything had changed about how the room experienced him. Not because he had performed composure, because he had genuinely stepped outside the loop, because he had become the observer, and the observer in a room full of reactors is the most powerful person present. Over the weeks that followed, something remarkable happened. The calibration attempts became less frequent. Not because the environment changed, it didn't, but because the loop requires a reactor and Elias had stopped being one. The people who had been running the loop on him, mostly unconsciously, mostly out of their own need for social calibration, found that the loop produced no useful data when directed at him, and gradually, without any conscious decision, they redirected their attention towards someone who was still providing the reaction they needed to measure. And Elias, freed from the energy expenditure of defending himself, of explaining himself, of working to prove the thing that kept being questioned, Elias found that energy available for something else entirely, for the actual work, for the genuine connections that began to form with people who were drawn to his stability, for the quiet, compounding growth that happens when you stop spending your resources on the loop and start investing them in the direction you actually want to go. This is what the observer position produces in the long run, not just the rewriting of a single interaction, the rewriting of the entire field. Tell me in the comments, is there a specific illusion about yourself or your reality that fell apart the moment you looked at it directly? An identity you'd been defending that dissolved when you finally stopped and watched it clearly? Leave it below. What you name, you free yourself from. And someone else reading your words may finally feel permission to look at the same thing in themselves. But here is the layer underneath Elias's story that I need you to sit with, because this is where the real precision lives. The most important thing that happened to Elias was not that other people stopped calibrating him. It was that he stopped calibrating himself. Because here is the truth that is almost never said directly. The external loop, the one where other people measure your reactions and adjust their treatment of you accordingly, is only half the story. The other half is the internal loop where you measure your own reactions and adjust your self-concept accordingly. Every time you reacted and then felt shame about the reaction, you were running the internal loop. Every time you defended yourself and then second-guessed whether the defense was too much or not enough, you were running the internal loop. Every time you measured your own composure against some imagined standard and found yourself lacking, you were running the internal loop. And the internal loop is, in many ways, more damaging than the external one. Because the external loop requires another person to run it. The internal loop runs entirely on its own. It runs in the car on the way home. It runs at 3 in the morning. It runs in the replay of conversations that happened days ago, where you're still trying to figure out if you handled it right, if you said the right thing, if you came across the way you wanted to. The observer position breaks both loops. Because the observer does not judge the reaction, the observer watches it. The observer does not measure the composure. The observer notices what is present. The observer does not replay the conversation, looking for evidence of failure or success. The observer sees what happened, notes what it reveals, and returns to the present moment. This is the liberation that is available to you, not just from other people's calibration, from your own. And this is where we need to talk about something that most conversations about composure and self-regulation never address directly. The question of what you do with the information that the reaction reveals, because the reaction, the cascade, the tightening, the heat, the urgency, is not just a problem to be managed, it is information. It is the body's precise, real-time report on where your internal ground is solid and where it has gaps. It is the map of the places where the loop can find purchase, where the provocation can land with disproportionate force, where the doubt or the fear or the unresolved question is still sitting below the surface, waiting to be activated. And the observer, rather than suppressing that information or being overwhelmed by it, can actually read it, can use it, can take the clarity of the observer position and turn it with genuine curiosity toward the question, what does this reaction tell me about where I need to do the deeper work? Not to fix yourself, not to eliminate your sensitivity or your feeling or your humanness, but to strengthen the internal ground, to fill in the gaps not by papering over them with behaviorals, strategies, but by actually seeing them clearly and doing the genuine work of understanding and integrating what is there. Because here's the paradox that the observer position reveals. The more fully you see yourself, including the cracks, including the patterns, including the places where you are still reactive and still uncertain and still working, the more stable you become. Not despite the seeing, but because of it. Because what has been seen cannot control you from the shadows. What has been seen is in the light, and in the light it can be worked with, understood, integrated, and ultimately transformed. This is the deepest level of what it means to be an observer. Not just watching other people's dynamics with clarity, watching your own internal landscape with the same quality of clear, non-judgmental, genuinely curious attention. And trusting that the act of watching, the act of turning consciousness toward what has been avoided, is itself the beginning of the transformation you've been looking for. You don't have to fix it, you have to see it. And what you see clearly enough, you change. That's not belief, that's quantum mechanics. Let's do the third practice, and this one goes deeper than the first two. I want you to think about the specific thing, the specific dynamic, the specific person, the specific pattern that you came here carrying. The thing that is underneath your interest in this topic, because you didn't arrive here by accident. Something brought you here. Some recognition, some frustration, some part of you that knows there is a loop running and is ready, finally, to see it clearly enough to step outside it. Hold that thing in your awareness. Don't analyze it. Don't rehearse what you're going to do about it. Just look at it. Turn the observer's gaze toward it. And now ask yourself, genuinely, with real curiosity, without the urgency to arrive at a comfortable answer. What would I see about this situation if I looked at it from the observer position, not from inside my reaction to it, not from inside my story about it, not from inside my judgment of myself or the other person, but from the clear, still, undefended position of the one who watches? What is actually happening here? What pattern am I running, and what pattern are they running, and how do these two patterns produce the loop that keeps repeating? Where is the crack in my internal ground that this situation keeps finding? What would I need to genuinely see about myself, not to judge, but to understand, in order to stop being moved by this in the way I've been moved? Sit with those questions, not to answer them immediately, to let the observer position do what it does, to let the clarity of genuine seeing begin to work on what has been held in the dark. Because the answers will come, not all at once, not on demand, but with the consistency of the observer position, with the practice of turning genuine attention toward what has been avoided, the clarity arrives. And with the clarity, the freedom. Now let's talk about what happens next. Because the observer position is not a destination you arrive at and then inhabit permanently without any further work. It is a practice. It is a daily, sometimes moment-to-moment practice of choosing to watch rather than react, of choosing to see rather than defend, of choosing the clarity of the observer over the familiarity of the loop. And there will be moments, there will absolutely be moments, where the loop pulls harder than the practice, where the cascade is faster than the breath, where the reaction happens before the observer can get into position, where you find yourself afterward in the familiar territory of having responded from inside the cascade rather than from the observer position. This is not failure. This is information. This is the loop showing you where it is still strongest, where the grooves are still deepest, where the work of observation still has the most to do. And the observer's response to those moments is not judgment, not the harsh, critical, you should have known better response that keeps the internal loop running. The observer's response is curiosity, is look at that. The loop ran there. What does that tell me? Where is the crack that it found? What was the specific thing that activated the cascade before the observer could intercept it? And then, what would I need to see more clearly in order for the observer to be in position sooner next time? This is how the practice builds, not through perfection, through progressive clarity, through the accumulation of moments where you chose to watch rather than react, and through the honest, compassionate, genuinely curious examination of the moments where you didn't. Over time, and this is not a promise about a specific timeline, because the timeline is different for every person and every pattern, but over time, the observer position becomes more natural, more accessible, more quickly available in the moments that previously activated the cascade before you could catch it. The gap grows. The automaticity of the reaction decreases. The space between stimulus and response expands into something that begins to feel genuinely free. And the people around you feel this change. They feel it before they can name it. They feel the quality of your presence shift from someone who can be measured and calibrated to someone who cannot. They feel the stability of someone who is watching rather than reacting, and they respond to it. Not because you've asked them to, not because you've explained what you're doing, but because human beings are wired to respond to genuine stability with a kind of instinctive recalibration. They rewrite who they think you are. not because you told them to, because you made it the only logical conclusion. There is something I want to say about the people in your life who have been running the loop on you, not to generate compassion for them, though that may come, but because understanding what is actually happening in them is part of seeing the situation clearly. Most people who run calibration loops, who test emotional stability, who probe for reactions, who use subtle provocations to determine rank and access, are not doing it from a place of power. They are doing it from a place of anxiety. The calibration loop is, at its core, a fear response. It is the behavior of someone who does not know how to assess their safety in a social environment without measuring other people's reactions. It is the behavior of someone whose internal ground is uncertain enough that they need the data of other people's responses to know where they stand. The person who cannot tolerate your composure, who escalates when you don't react, who becomes more provocative when the first provocation produces no data, is not demonstrating power. They are demonstrating that your stability is threatening to their need to measure you. They are showing you exactly where their own internal ground is uncertain. This is not an invitation to feel superior. It is an invitation to see clearly, to see the loop not as an attack but as a symptom, to see the person running it not as an enemy but as someone whose own observer position is underdeveloped, who is so inside their own reactions that they cannot see them as patterns rather than as truth, and seeing that clearly does something important. It removes the personal charge from the interaction. It makes it harder to take the provocation personally, not because you've suppressed the personal response, but because you can see with genuine clarity that the provocation is not really about you. It is about the other person's need to measure and categorize, and you have simply decided not to be measurable in the way they require. This is the compassion that the observer position produces, not the performed compassion of pretending not to be bothered. The genuine compassion of seeing another person's pattern clearly enough to understand it as a pattern rather than as a personal assault. And that understanding, then, that clarity of seeing, changes the quality of your response in ways that no amount of behavioral strategy can replicate. Because when you respond from genuine understanding rather than from managed reaction, the response has a different quality. It carries no defensiveness because there is nothing to defend. It carries no hostility because there is no personal wound being managed. It carries only the clarity of someone who sees what is happening and chooses to engage with it from the observer position, which means engaging with it from the most powerful position available. Not powerful in the sense of dominating, powerful in the sense of being free, powerful in the sense of having genuine choice about how to respond, powerful in the sense of being the one in the room who is watching rather than being watched, who is seeing rather than being seen, who is observing the loop rather than running inside it. That is the most powerful position in the universe, not because it controls, because it sees, and clarity, genuine, undefended, fully present clarity, is the only force that transforms without resistance. Now I want to speak directly to you, to the specific version of this that you are living. You know what your loop looks like. You know the specific person or the specific type of person or the specific kind of situation that activates the cascade most reliably. You know the note that gets played and the sound you produce in response. You've been aware of it at some level for longer than you might want to admit, and there is something in you that has been ready to step outside it, not just to manage it better, not just to produce a more composed performance, but to genuinely, finally actually step outside the loop and see it from the observer position. To see it clearly enough that it loses its automatic grip. To see yourself clearly enough that you stop being surprised by your own reactions and start being able to choose something different. That readiness, that willingness to look, is why you're here. And the fact that you're still here, that you haven't looked away, that you've stayed with this all the way through, that tells me something about you that you may not be giving yourself full credit for. You already see it. You've been seeing it for longer than you've admitted. Something in you recognized the loop before your mind could fully articulate it. Something in you has been waiting for the clarity to arrive that would make it possible to step outside it. That clarity is here now. And what has been seen cannot be unseen. The observer position is not something you have to build from scratch. It is something you have to remember. It is the part of you that has always been watching the reactions, watching the patterns, watching the loop run, but has been so far in the background, so buried under the automatic, so drowned out by the cascade, that you may not have recognized it as the most fundamental thing about you. But it is. The observer, the quiet, aware, watching presence that is registering this moment right now, is more fundamentally you than any reaction you've ever had. More fundamentally you than any pattern you've ever run. More fundamentally you than any story you've ever told about who you are and why you do what you do. That observer is what you are beneath all of it. And the moment you operate from that position, the moment you live from the observer rather than from the reactor, everything changes. Not because you forced it to change, because you stopped looking away. Here is the integration principle I want to leave you with, not as a technique, as a way of being. Every moment of your life is an opportunity to choose the observer position, not just in the dramatic moments of provocation and challenge. In the ordinary moments, in the conversation that is slightly uncomfortable, in the meeting that carries a subtext, in the relationship that has a pattern you've been pretending not to see, in the internal dialogue that runs at 3 a.m, in the story you tell yourself about why you are the way you are. In every one of those moments, there is a choice between the reactor position and the observer position, between following the cascade and watching it, between being inside the loop and seeing it clearly from the outside, between the automatic and the chosen. And every time you choose the observer, every time you take the breath, name what is happening, bring the quality of genuine, curious attention to what is present, you are doing something that has effects far beyond the immediate moment. You are strengthening the neural pathways of observation. You are deepening the internal ground. You are building the stability that cannot be shaken because it has been genuinely seen. You are making the observer position more natural, more accessible, more quickly available the next time the loop tries to run. And you are, with each act of clear seeing, rewriting the story of who you are. Not the story other people tell about you, though that changes too, the story you tell yourself, the story that runs underneath everything else. The story that determines what you believe is possible for you, what you believe you deserve, what you believe you are capable of. The observer sees that story clearly, sees it as a story, as a construction, a pattern, a learned narrative, rather than as the truth. And in seeing it clearly, creates the space to choose a different story. Not by forcing it, by watching the old one long enough that it loses its automatic authority. This is the work, and it is the most important work there is. Not because it makes you more impressive to other people, though it does. Not because it breaks the external loops, though it does, but because it gives you back something that the loops, internal and external, have been taking from you for as long as they've been running. It gives you back yourself, the real self, the observer self, the self that is not defined by its reactions, not measured by its composure performance, not categorized by other people's calibration. The self that watches and in watching changes what it sees. The self that was never meant to look away. You are not here to fix your life. You are not here to perfect your composure. You are not here to win the calibration game by playing it better than everyone else. You are here to step outside the game entirely, to become the one who watches it with clear eyes and a steady gaze and the unshakable knowledge that the observer is the most powerful position in the universe. Not because the observer controls, because the observer sees, and what is seen clearly enough transforms. You've been watching longer than you realize, and what you've been watching has been changing slowly in the background beneath the surface of all the loops and reactions and patterns in response to the quality of your attention. Reality has been responding to your observation. It always has been. The question was just whether you were observing from inside the cascade or from the clear, still, undefended position of the genuine witness. Now you know the difference. Now you've felt the difference, and what has been felt this clearly cannot be ignored. The loop will try to run again, the cascade will rise again, the provocation will come again, from the same sources or new ones, wearing the same familiar costume or a new one. And in that moment, you will have a choice you may not have fully had before, not because the loop has disappeared, but because you can see it. And what you can see, you can step outside of. Take the breath, name what is happening, watch from the observer position, and let what you watch transform in the light of your awareness. This is the practice, this is the work, this is the invitation. If something in this transmission landed, if you found yourself seeing something you've been pretending not to see, or recognizing a loop you've been running, or feeling the first real sense of what the observer position actually feels like from the inside, I want to hear about it. Drop in the comments the specific thing you saw. Not the polished version, the real one. The thing you've been avoiding looking at that you finally looked at today. Your seeing amplifies mine, and mine amplifies yours. This is not a passive channel, this is a field of observers. And the more of us who are watching clearly, the stronger the field becomes. If this reached you, share it with someone who is ready to look. Not someone who needs convincing, someone who is already at the edge of seeing and just needs someone to point at the thing they've been circling. That's who this is for. And when you share it, you're not just passing along a video, you're giving that person permission to look at what they've been circling, and that act of permission creates a field between the two of you that amplifies the clarity for both. What one person finally sees, the other suddenly finds easier to see as well. When the noise of the day has settled, when you find yourself reacting to something instead of watching it, come back to this. Let it find you in the stillness rather than the storm. That's when it goes deepest. And if you want to stay in the clarity, if you want to keep going deeper into what the observer position reveals about reality, about identity, about the mechanics of how consciousness shapes what it sees, then stay. There is more to see. There is always more to see. And the observer never stops watching. You were never meant to look away. The observer is the most powerful position in the universe, not because it controls, because it sees. What you watch, you change. What you avoid controls you. Now you see. And what has been seen cannot be unseen. The next layer of this work lives in the video on when you see through reality's illusion, because what you've just activated here, the observer position, is precisely the lens that reveals what that video is pointing at. Watch what happens to the loops, the patterns, and the stories you carry when you apply this same quality of seeing to the nature of reality itself.